Okay, here's a gentleman who knows him well because he covered him. So we'll do a little Patriots here. Maybe even ask one Celtics question. I need an answer to something. Kurt Schilling, of course, and that is the great Bob Bryant, Boston Globe sports columnist, emeritus. Want to get that in there for you. Bob, what's happening, buddy? How you been?
I'm good. Thank you.
You got it. All right, what is your take on Schilling? Do you think that he gets in, and do you think that he should get in?
From everything I've heard, he will not get in. I think this is wrong. I vote for him. I think that anyone who doesn't vote for him on the basis of his goofiness, shall we say, to be polite, and specifically because of his endorsement of the cartoon featuring that advocated the lynching of a sports writer, which I choose to take as sheer hyperbole, and as goofy as he is, I do not think he honestly believes that anyone, including sports writers, should be lynched, and that was simply hyperbole and bad humor.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone doesn't vote for him for that basis, I'm embarrassed on behalf of the organization. I don't want to. That's not a reason to me for not to vote for him. The reason he's a borderline candidate in the eyes of some people, not for me. I thought he was a drop-dead Hall of Famer, but. Depending on how you evaluate things, he's a borderline candidate. I think he belongs in. I think that, to sum it up, the only time that he was not just a good pitcher, but a great pitcher, were the times when he was injured. I think if you look it up, you will find that out.
Yeah.
And I think his whole postseason resume is impeccable, and I think that he's a Hall of Famer, but he will not get in from what I gather.
We're on the same page, both counts. For those who don't know, by the way, Kurt's postseason ledger here, 11-2. In 19 postseason starts with a 2.23 ERA. So
and a
it's
0.98 WHIP.
Look at Bob. Listen, I'm with you. He was great. Bonds, I got to ask you the requisite bonds. And what do you feel about this?
I have not yet voted for those people. I came around to the point where I gave it serious thought. I wrote in a column that I had my hand hovering over their boxes, and I can truthfully say that's the truth. And then it came down to answering the following question. Will I sleep better tonight if I vote for them or if I don't vote for them? And the answer was the latter. So I did not vote for them.
So it's a morality thing. Which
I
gotcha.
have said for years that we are being asked to be judge and jury. We are trying to decide which juice pitchers pitch to which juice batters to what effect. How many home runs would have landed on the warning track absent the juice? How many strikeouts would not have been obtained at 89 as opposed to 93 on the behalf of the pitcher, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it is an impossible task, and one we should not have. I believe that the Hall of Fame should take charge of the voting. I think they should tell us specifically yes or no. Factor in the PEDs or don't. And if you don't factor them in, then put people in on their numbers, but just put a disclaimer up outside the hall that there was a period of time when there were PEDs that were in baseball, and many of the people in here played during that era, and there's great confusion about who did what, but we feel that people should be judged strictly on their numbers and their merits. If they would do that, then I would happily vote for them all.
Yeah. It's when you ask people to play God, it's just a fruitless endeavor. It's just you're going to get all sorts of mixed answers and all sorts of
I'm a mixed answer guy, and the fact is that a lot of people have come around to the point where they no longer wish to play God, and they are stating that they're tired of it and they can't deal with it, and they're just going to vote these people in because and the rationale is they're part of the history of baseball. The all-time home run leader is not in. One of the 5 or 6 greatest right-hand pitchers of all time is not in. A guy who hit 60 home runs 3 years in a row and hit 600 home runs is not in. A guy who had 3,000 hits and 500 home runs is not in, etc. And all because of their association or alleged association, in some cases, with PEDs.
We're talking to Bob Bryant from the Boston Globe, sports columnist emeritus, and of course we'll squeeze in a Pat's question for Bob, no doubt. There's obviously been a thawing of sentiment, and you can see this in the percentage that reflects the surge by both Clemens and Bonds. What we haven't seen is a surge for Sosa. I'm not a Sosa guy. Bob, I got to add, my producer, every time this comes up, all he wants to know about is Sammy Sosa. Can you please educate the young man and tell him that Sammy Sosa has no shot ever?
Well, I would say this: if the other two get in, and it appears that they're on path to induction in the next year or two, I don't know how you. What's the rationale to deny him? The rationale,
I'll tell you mine. Mine is that, and obviously old enough to have seen them all play. When Sammy came up as a skinny outfielder for the White Sox, he was kind of a bit player who was interesting. Bonds was a star, and so was Clemens. And I just feel like, yeah, I think
Okay.
that it's as basic as that for me, Bob.
All right. That's fair. I understand that. I see what you're saying, and that's the case because those who vote, many who vote for Bond specifically, say, well, he was a Hall of Famer before we think he did it, and we all know when he did it. You
Yeah.
can just look in the book and see when he did it.
Exactly.
And he was a Hall of Famer on his path to Cooperstown before he started doing it and transformed himself and got the size 17 and a half head and all the stuff that he did. And Clemens had won 192 games as a Red Sox pitcher, and he didn't. And I think it's pretty clear he started doing it when he got to Toronto. So and certainly when he was with the Yankees. So later on, and elevated his total into the 350s. So. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, I can see that. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, it's Samter.
But I don't know though. That aside, if they put them in, and everybody goes in that's got a remote association, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, Bob doesn't want to be rude because he's a gentleman, but basically what he just told you is get back in your hole, Samter. That's basically what he just told you. So let me ask you about Tim Raines. Tim Raines, to me, and again, I told my audience, I started really watching baseball right around 1980 with great vigor and playing, collecting cards, obviously old enough to understand. My dad's a big fan, and he connected all the dots for me historically. But if you didn't see Tim Raines in Montreal, you don't view him as a Hall of Famer. You and I both did. Obviously, he was kind of like a National League version of Ricky Henderson. He's going to get in today. And quite frankly, I think he should. Where do you stand on Tim?
Yeah, I was not an original voter. I was educated, and I think people have to understand that voters often change their minds on the basis of reevaluation and education. And when you started when it's presented to you that he was on base more times, then you start naming these long list of Hall of Famers, starting with Tony Gwynn, and then you look at all, and he did so much of his good work under the radar and where they speak French, and nobody was paying the attention they should have to the early Guerrero or to Tim Raines or to Walker or any of the people who were up in Montreal. And Montreal players have been slighted. Carter wouldn't have gotten in if he hadn't gone to a media-focused place such as New York.
I would respectfully disagree with that. I really would disagree with that assertion. I think Gary Carter had enough respect nationally; he would have gotten in. I really believe that.
I'm not sure. We can have a healthy agree to disagree on that one, but I'm not sure about that. But he deserved to be in anyway. Tim Raines. So yes, he's going in today. It's clear. Bagwell's going in today. It's clear, but Raines finally it took a. When you're the Avis to the Hertz, and he was not Ricky Henderson, but he was Tim Raines, and he was very, very good on his own merits.
Yeah, well said. Bob Ryan with us here, of course. Tiki and Tierney. Tiki is out. Brandon going solo. All right, so let me ask you about the Pats here. Not that they need any additional focus or any additional propaganda to get them ready to roll. They always are ready to roll. But what is the Antonio? How does that manifest itself at all?
Not in the least amusing aside in their case because of this, but their nature and their leadership and the way that Belichick approaches things, and given the fact that they are on a mission, a dual mission this year, which A is that they lost last year and by blowing the home field at the end of the year by their own foolishness, and that Belichick has to take the rap for this because they did not play to win the way they should have against Miami, and they would have had a home field against Denver, and maybe things would have been different. And they know it. So they've been on a mission to rectify that, to get the best record, to get the home field, which they've done. And secondly, all the Brady attendant nonsense of Brady being suspended for 4 games unfairly, without question, and that he's their leader, and they take that as a personal affront as well. It reflects on everybody. So they're motivated, whether Facebook Live existed or not, whether Mike Tomlin existed or not.
Yeah.
They're going to laugh off. He's not the first person to refer to them with that derogatory term. That's the way they are viewed throughout the league. They know it, and they embrace it.
And yet they continue to flourish. Bob Ryan with us here on Tiki and Tierney. Bob, I want to ask you a quick Celtics hit here. Obviously, they're an interesting team, and we know that Danny Ainge has an abundance of assets in terms of draft picks, et cetera. I know that Carmelo said he wouldn't waive it. I think that could change until the trade as the losses pile up. Danny Ainge interested at all on any level? If he would consent to a trade, could you see Carmelo working with the Celtics?
I could see that that they would find a way to fit him in. I don't think Brad Stevens would turn him down. No, I don't think so. And they are on the lookout for another major scorer to take the load of, because when the play Isaiah's become remarkable now, and he's having the best 5'9" play since Calvin Murphy, and he's just amazing what he's doing. He's averaging damn near 30 points a game since he came off the injured list, including a 52-point game, 29-point quarter, et cetera, et cetera. They still know that in the playoffs the last 2 years, people have ganged up on him and made it difficult for him, and they need another reliable major scorer. They've got decent guys, but nobody even close to his level. And Carmelo would fill that bill, of course. And I'm not. Danny is unpredictable, and he keeps his counsel and never tips what he's going to do. And so nothing what Danny Ainge does in this regard would surprise me, and that would include Carmelo Anthony. Now, it's all abstract conversation. No one's suggesting that there's any conversations taking place between those two. But Carmelo would be absolutely ridiculously foolish if the opportunity presented itself and he turned it down.
Bob, I got to run. Great spot. Really appreciate it, Bob. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There he is, Bob Bryant, of course, Boston Globe sports columnist emeritus.